Hello, everyone. Today's episode is with a special guest, Vera Franco. She's a possibilitator, and she's holding space for an amazing game world called Possibilitator Training. And she's today here invited because we are talking about a very precious theme of sexuality, which is not yet so discovered in the realm of possibility management. And we want to dive into Anne-Chloé. Welcome into this space of discovering and sharing about our experiencing about sexuality in our life. And welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Christina.
I wanted to start because I really, in the latest weeks, somehow I sense for me that it's a territory, really a part of my life, a part of my bodies, like not just my physical body, but my bodies, that somehow when I did an experiment that in the context of possibility management we called it's healing the white widow, survival strategy of the white widow, which is it's a survival strategy to use the sexual energy as a way to control and to manipulate and to be safe and to protect ourselves by exchanging sexual energies. And both women and men can develop, like decide to have such survival strategy. And there's a healing process which is about really stopping to use any sexual energy at all for a certain period of time, until the moment where the choice becomes real. Like there's a real choice about, am I using my sexual energy consciously or unconsciously? And when it's survival, it's unconscious. And so it's this process of stopping it at all until the moment where there's a different place in my body or our body about when to use the sexual energy consciously. And from that moment, in a way, I'm still doing this experiment because I realize how much my whole identity and my whole life was about being sexual and being flirtatious and being sexy and being hot and being cute with men to feel safe. And like the other day I was outside and I realized that having done this experiment, now I just have this no. I have this no to this unconscious, like invisible exchange of energy that even happened on the street, that happened with the cashier, that happened with the waiter, that happens. And it seems to me that so many people out there are using that. It's like this whole, our culture is based on this invisible, unconscious use of sexual energy. And having done this experiment, I have this no. And then I realized it was really a sadness of, okay, well, if I have this no really for the outside, how can I have a yes, for example, in my relationship? How do I shift from this like no to this yes in when I want? Because I feel like I don't have a grip on it. And anyway, I was just sharing this, really my own process and my own question, because of, it's not that I've researched the realm of conscious sexuality a lot, but I have met people. I have met people in circles and in festivals and in conferences. And what I have found is that a lot of people who I think, it seems to me, do conscious sexuality, I've done this research without the distinction, for example, of, oh, there is a survival strategy called White Widow that uses sexual energy as a defense strategy, or that there's such a thing as gremlin that can use sexual energy, or is this low drama or is this high drama using sexual energy? And it's like discovering this realm of what is sexual high drama? What is sexual high drama? And this is really where I'm barely at this door. And I want to share one more thing, is this, what I realize is many women that I've met have this wish that the sexual topic actually would not even be a topic in relationship, that women are tired of being sexual slave, are tired of being sexual objects, that they've it's exhausting to use sexual energy in a way to, as a survival strategy, even in our own primary relationship or husband and wife. And so there's this thing of like, God, can we just not talk about it? And in a way, this is also where I'm starting about this going back to zero, where there's this no, and there's this, I'm trying to get back to zero so I can discover sexual high drama from a place outside of the patriarchy. And that would be really my question. I would want to have this discovery journey with both you, Christine and Vera, about what is your own research or discovery about sexuality outside the patriarchy in your primary relationship, but also in your life as a whole.
Well, thank you, Anne-Chloé, for this exploration in this question of research. I also wanted to say also to the recording and to you that I've done. I completed a year of doing the experiment that Anne-Chloé was just talking about, of healing the White Widow, that consists of absolutely no contact with, especially like the sex, or the sex that there's sexual attraction, but also not just that. With the sex, it could be both, men and women or whoever, about who do I exchange sexual energy with, unconscious sexual energy with. And so for me, and it was great that it was in 2020, in the year 2020, because it gave me opportunity to have almost really practically no interactions with men, except for the absolutely logistics, and also not so much contact with women, because I also discovered that I exchanged unconscious sexual energy with women as a survival strategy. And as some women are asking me about this, even ones that wouldn't consider themselves flirtatious, have discovered, wow, they have to this leaking of their sexual energy towards men, but not just towards men, towards also women, that whenever there's a man or there's some kind of part of their attention, and this is what happened to me, part of my attention would always know where a man in the room is and from which direction they're looking at me. And this also would happen sometimes with women, and it's really as a way to know from which light I'm being looked at. So this is very obviously a survival strategy. And in my explorations, what I wanted to, even before I've done this work with the White Widow, I've done some tantra work, some conscious sexuality work. And I agree with Anne-Chloé that there's not that distinction of using it as a survival strategy. And what is the distinction between low drama and high drama? So one thing that I've found interesting in the conscious sexuality explorations that I've done was that a lot of it towards women, for example, the work is towards taking away guilt about being sexual. And it seems like it's one of the first steps to leave patriarchy, is that leaving the rule that women are either like sluts or prudes. And so to kind of welcome that there is sexuality, there is desire, and it's okay. And if there isn't sexuality or sexual desire, that is also okay. That's so that nothing in this range is considered a disease or some kind of something's wrong. And then it seems like it kind of stops there, that there's like the women go like, okay, I'm sexual. I can, I have my consent back, which is like really the first parts of like women empowering, is like, I have my consent, I have my authority. I can say yes and I can say no. And it's such a great starting point to have boundaries and to say no, and how no could be really healing. Say no, no, no for anything, which is part of what I did also with the White Widow process. And then to start discovering, I think that's the like phase 2 is to start discovering, where is my yes? Where's my authentic yes? That is not this, oh, I have to, like, oh, there's a man, or I'm a woman, I have to dress in a certain way. Otherwise, who's going to listen to me? Because if I'm not appearing attractive or sexy or agreeable, whatever. And so I think that's the phase 2 that I would say, okay, where does my sexuality come from, and for what? And for what am I sexual, or towards what? And for me, I have this amazing privilege, because I think I was in contact with my own sexuality without, when I was really young, and without having a lot of, this is like, I didn't have a lot of guilt towards my own sexuality. And it can be that the ones, what I've noticed is with the people that I've worked with, a person's first sexual encounters can really either their own, like, first time that they have sex, or the first time they have they play with themselves in a sexual way, or that they've seen some sexual scenes, can really form this if the sexuality is a kind of, I'm okay, it's healthy, and there's nothing wrong with that, or it's kind of twisted. And for me, I was really lucky, and I think it was luck somehow, or Echo was protecting me in some ways, that my first sexual experiences were really about discovering and exploring my own body, and exploring what it felt for me and for the person that I was with. That was also their first time. That was my boyfriend. And so I was 16 years old, and it was just a super sweet of, I don't know how this goes. I don't know how this goes too. Let's try this out, and let's stop. I'd be like, no, this is hurting. Let's stop. And like, he even ran me a bath, and we just like hugged in the bath for 2 hours before I would say, okay, I'm ready to go again. And so to have this experience as this, wow, it is possible to have this kind of intimacy, to have this kind of safety, really allowed that when I would be connected with sexuality, I just could feel it as a, wow, this is my body being alive. And so this is what I've, after the White Widow process, when I got clear of my no and experienced myself being a woman with a certain level of power and authority and voice and presence, without having to use some kind of like seduction, or even to the subtle level, just using my radiance to just make space in the room so that I could speak, which is what I was using mostly unconsciously, was using my radiance, some energy to just like, hey, pay attention to me. I'm going to talk right now. I can now use parts of my presence that are not with arrows, that are not about my radiance. And so now what I've discovered is, okay, my sexuality, my yes, is very much connected with the aliveness of my body. And I started really discovering okay, and it's really still an exploration. But what I've discovered is that my authentic sexuality in terms of exchange and eros really has to be with being in an intimate relation, like being in building an intimacy that is authentic and vulnerable with another person. And it's also connected with discovery. So it really comes back to the same kind of elements that I had on my first sexual encounter. And what I've been also discovering is that this aliveness, if it's just for my partner, also starts being stale. So it's really what I've been discovering is that, and this happened also during my White Widow process, is when I had so much energy back because I wasn't leaking it out to men and to being concerned if that guy is I'm attracted to him, but not too much that he thinks that I want something to do with him. I wasn't leaking all this energy. I suddenly had all this energy back to do things, to make projects, to run workshops, to have creative ideas for collaboration. And so this is what I'm getting back as well. This sexual energy, this life energy gets really a drive on ideas of projects. And yeah, and still it's very, very connected to my senses, to all of my bodies. So one of the ways that I feel just this arousal coming, this natural arousal of being alive, is really the sunshine and feeling the air, the wind, and so for me, it's very connected to like my bodies. How's that for you, Christine?
Like while you were speaking, it was like, okay, how did it start with me, right? Like when was my first time? And actually it sucked. It was just the opposite, what you just said. It was so mechanically, and so that I already felt used. I felt like it was just a translation from the patriarchy into the bedroom. And that I felt like, okay, what he's doing with me, like I was the object, and I felt like I have no idea what to do else. This is where I started my sexual journey. And there were actually, like, I had years where I said, I don't want to have a relationship, because when sexuality is part of this game, I don't want to have a relationship. I don't want to have sex. I don't want to have, like, I would not even call it intimacy. I had not yet the word in my vocabulary to call it intimacy. I just called it sexuality. And there was a starving in me, like this, oh yeah, I really want to have from time to time, and at the same time it's like, no, I really blocked myself from being with men. And once in a while I started again a relationship, and I thought like, okay, this time it's different. And then I realized, no, I'm still in this pattern of I felt often abused within, like, and the thing was that I was so in this prison in myself that I could not even say stop. I said stop in me. I saw, like, I remember 3 relationships I quitted while I had sex. In my head, I was like, okay, when this is a relationship, and this is part of a relationship, I'm done. And I quitted the relationships, and I had no idea there was no other possibility in my space. I had no other ideas. It was just that. And at the same time, in me, there was this longing of, there must be something else. I know something else is possible. I know it. And it's not the Hollywood or the porn, what is on online. And it's definitely not that. And I don't know how to get there. Like, how can I maintain? How can I do that? These driving questions I had for so long, and still I was giving my authority and my center away to men by like, is there a man out there who can bring me this, like who can show me another way of relating, another way of having a sexuality, and being together and learn from this guy. And from today's perspective, I was still totally in survival modus of in this space of sexuality. And even I saw myself in my daily life on a totally different age. Like there I grew up, but in the bedroom I was still a toddler. I was, or like a little girl. So and then I found this man, and I'm still very grateful to this man. He brought kind of the sexuality back into my life. And even it was still unhealthy from this perspective where I was, but I could grew into something like that I understood, oh, there is more. I was not fooling myself. I always had this question, like, is it just an kind of a mind fuck what I have? Is it just me wanting something else? And is it just a fantasy in my head? Or is there something out there? And then this guy had years from tantric practice, and he somehow brought me back, like that it's about my pleasure as well. It was like, whoa, really? Okay. Like, and he means it. It's not like he just does it because he wants to get something out of me. And all these different kind of layers of oh, I don't need to please him. I'm not in this prison of like, I'm not the slave giving the master. And I can say no as well. What you said, Vera. It was like, whoa, I can do that. And still I was very young, and I did not, like, maybe I did it a bit the other way around. Like, you got your authority back and then you started. And while I had this experience that something else is possible, I grew into kind of a teenager in myself and starting to experiment with the sexuality. And then this relationship was over. And with my husband now, I totally started from the beginning and said, okay, this is how I want to approach sexuality and intimacy. Like and in between there were still like 3-4 years from the last relationship to my partnership now. And for me, it was this growing up in myself journey. But first, the huge step was to release myself and say no to patriarchy in the way of how sexuality is embedded into patriarchy. This was a short version of my journey.
Yeah. No, I want to say also that even though I had these experiences, I grew up in patriarchy, and so I still also had these, I want to please the man and all of these things, and even receiving, being like, for example, receiving sexual practice like oral sex was something that for so many years was just the most scary thing in sex for me, exactly because I didn't have a doing, or the thing that I spent more time was like to dedicate myself to loving or to give pleasure or something like this. But being in the receiving end, it was just so vulnerable and exposing. And I just would go into shutdown. And most of the times, like 2 minutes, I'm like, stop. I can't, just let's do something that more mechanical, or more that I know, or that I know where it goes. It was, and actually I started, even after this White Widow experiment, I took on this, okay, everything is now from zero. Like really to, maybe I don't know, to really go in, like, I don't know anything about it. I don't even know if I like this, if it gives me pleasure or not. And to, yeah, with the work in possibility management, to also have more of my feelings, have more of holding space for myself to go liquid, and to be vulnerable and to be seen like that. That was such it gives a completely different dimension to what would be, what is connection or sexual intimacy. And I want to bring this little kind of piece of the puzzle that for me was very important, is that whenever something that for me changed in sexuality is exactly as instead of survival, instead of like a mechanistic or automatic thing, was that for me, sexuality had a lot to do with orgasm. Orgasm and sex. So it has to end in orgasm. It has to end in, like, I have to have an orgasm. Also this whole thing of the patriarchy, that the sex ends when the man reaches climax, and then the woman might have an orgasm or not. So I wasn't really on that, but I my own like assumption was I have to have an orgasm, otherwise it's not sex, and they have to have an orgasm, otherwise it's not sex. And so to just starting deconstructing all of the assumptions and all of the restrictions that I would have in order for it to be called sex, gave a lot of, and also not to jump to the ladder of climax, or like, okay, I'm getting there. All of this chasing the orgasm was really taking me away from being present with my partner. Mm-hmm. And I just noticed for how many years I was just in my head when I had sex. So I still had pleasure and it was still okay, but I wasn't connected with all of my bodies. Mm-hmm. And just being, okay, what is the speed right now? How is the quality of the space between me and this person? And to really starting letting go almost of this addiction to orgasm just allowed so much more, I guess, like it's exploring like a new country for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally resonate with this, Vera. It is like this, earlier I was just with the person. I was just with the man. Like I as if I was not in my body at all while I had sex. It was like, and to come back into my full body and experience, like, how does it feel? Like this, like, how does it really feel? I couldn't, like what you just described, I totally resonate. And this was the key. And for me, it was so this shame, which kicked also in, that I do that. It felt like at the beginning when I started that, it was like, how dare I to just like be with me? It's like, how dare I? And then, okay, no, it's fine. It's totally fine. This is my body. This is my body. I'm starting to own my body and be there and stay centered while I'm with a man. And that was, a revelation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to add in my own experience, in the way, for me, this thing about reaching climax and having orgasm was also the sooner it would come, and the sooner it would be over. Yes. Then it was over, and then I could go to sleep, or we could go on and do something else, and this complete like survival slave, like this is a chore. Like sex was a chore in many of my relationship, and also including this. Really, now that you're talking about it, is okay. Maybe I have an orgasm, but it doesn't matter until then. I need to give the orgasm to the man, and really this like discovery in the past years with my partner, where actually, in a way, it's maybe not so consciously, but it is like that. Is more, one of us often has an orgasm and not so often both, and to explore that of, and to, like, for me to have this space, or for him to create this space for me to have an orgasm and to enjoy it in all my bodies for as long as I wanted, and just to stay there, to just stay there, and in like in physical intimacy, and without having to think about anything, think about him, what needs to happen next. And so I had this question about, like, hints, like how, I mean, this question about how do you negotiate that with, because this is three women talking and during their exploration, and at the same time what I'm hearing is that each of our partners is somehow on this journey with us, and that there's a space, there is possibility of negotiation in that domain of sexual intimacy, but probably also in other parts of the relationship. And what I have found is, like, Vera, sort of what you were offering, and this is really still very scary territory for me, is we're here naked in all dimension, in terms of naked also of construct and obligation, and of I have to or shoulds, and then what do I want? And to say, okay, I want you to put your hand here. Okay, actually, I want you to move your hand over here. Okay, let's stop. Okay, let's start again. And I can, I notice in me how easy it is to start negotiating, and then when there's some arousal, desire, when the climax starts, then the mechanics come back really quickly in place. And this is one of my research place at the moment of, God, I had to not fall into the mechanical, and to stay in this negotiation, like moment to moment. So, yeah, do you have any hints in terms of negotiating also this in with a partner?
Yes, thank you. Because, you know, funny enough, interesting enough, that it was actually my partner who started suggesting experiments that weren't about the orgasm whatsoever. Also, and I'm grateful that he has experience of being in a community that explores sexuality in different dimensions. And so one of the things that we are, when we come back in physical presence too, but that we are connecting and exploring, is how can we explore sexual energy and eros and arousal and not go to sleep, and also that it doesn't go to orgasm, because we know that at some point in our relationship, our partnership, there's going to be times where someone doesn't want to, or is totally turned off, or because that's one of the things that also gets in the way for a clear intimacy, is sometimes assumptions or expectations and resentments. And so all of these things that block intimacy, for me, block sexual energy completely. And so, even though we have this practice of telling what our withholdings towards each other, and resentments and assumptions, and to bring back into a completely clean and clear space, this okay, let's create the space while we on purpose, that we just explore different aspects of sexuality, or of touching each other, that have nothing to do with, like, we just completely take orgasm off the table. And so one of the things that we did with each other was, for a whole 10 days, we had 15 minutes practice of receiving touch and attention. And they would have to be 15 minutes not together, not one after the other, because then the whole, like, the assumption about, oh, I have to now retribute, give back, would just turn on. So it would have to be like almost an hour separate. And also to not have sex close by in these receiving practices. And it would just be, put the timer on, okay, what is it that you want? Where do you want to be touched? Or how do you want to be touched? And to really allow, the fears to come up, the slowing it down, checking in. And even when I was giving physical touch, when I was doing the touching, the more active part of touching, it was also not just, I'm going to follow instructions. I could sense as well when part of him would fall asleep or go somewhere else or go into automatism. And so we would have a commitment to say, hey, I'm just having this impulse. What is going on? And we would pause. And he would do the same to me. And this what I discovered, and this is also a part of this hint onto your question, Anne-Chloé, is 100% of the time when I would really tune in about where does my body want to be touched, it was nothing that I thought it was going to be. It was often something like your hand on my face. This was like, I would ask my physical body, where? And it would be something just totally, just that would increase like care and closeness and love. And it would just really, even the 15 minutes, most of the times, those 10 days, it wasn't so much about like erogenous areas or arousal. It was really about, and this is what I discovered, gosh, most of my physical touch with men have been about arousal, have been about turning on a certain type of energy in me. I am missing this other one. This is what my body actually needs. And to just know that this is where my body is at really shifts the whole, like, okay, so if I want to create physical intimacy with this person right now, like, I know that my body wants this. And maybe if my body's totally relaxed, maybe I'd like something else. And I did play also with, okay, touch me with more. For example, one of the times I asked, can you do the same touch that you're doing on my arm and my leg, but just can you add a bit of more sexual energy to see what happens? And so it wasn't, the touch didn't change, but it was like as if my partner just raised a little bit of their erotic energy. And wow, the same happened in my body, but the same arm or the part of my leg was touched. And so we could really feel let's say the intention or the purpose. So we could also add a new dimension of saying, okay, I just want loving touch or healing touch. Now I want a bit more erotic energy, but also but not too much. Okay. And this was really great to navigate the different energetic experiences. And another thing for me was to really get to know where parts of me tend to go to my fantasy world or to my head, and so I made a note of all of the sentences about he needs to have an orgasm, or I need to, or I should, like all the lists of the shoulds, because what I would notice is as soon as I would get on the train of orgasm, or as soon as I would start, like you said, Anne-Chloé, as soon as I started getting arousal, a part of me would just go like, okay, this is going right. And so I don't need to be awake anymore. So just to keep my wakefulness is, as soon as arousal would come, I would be extremely like attentive to these sentences about this goes next, and now this goes next, and this goes next. Mm. So basically how my box works, my sex box works. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. What I want to add, thank you, Vera, for this. All these informations. It's like, oh yes. What I want to add is like what I'm experimenting again and again is actually when the arousal starts, that I relax, that I breathe out and relax, because the arousal comes with a tension, with a contraction.
Yeah.
And so relax again, and especially my womb area. It's really like relax in the hips and let go. And at the same time, the arousal comes more, but on a totally different level. It's not this, okay, like what you just said, let's go, jump, and you go it's just
it's not focused. It's not focused. It's like dispersed.
And this is what makes such a difference. And there was this trick sometimes, like when I started with this guy, he said, just focus on, not focus on this, focus on the corner of the room. First I thought, like, what he's asking me, but actually for a moment it worked, because I did something totally different. Like I was focusing, and I was not focusing on this, on the train, but on the corner. I was like, okay, even it's not the solution, but at that time it was like, okay, there's something else is possible than just focusing on the train. And what I also want to add is really this, the purpose of healing in having to use sexuality as healing, and not like that the pleasure and the being intimate and being together and being with is it's nourished by this healing together, especially in the space of your vagina and all these different, like there are spaces like in me where I realize, like, wow, I have so much contractions and so much tensions. And when we are just together, slowly and very gentle, I can sometimes just emotions pop up, and I can just be in these emotions, and I can cry, and he would hold me while we would be together. And then something is again relaxing, and we are navigating into a totally new space. And I think for me these moments are so precious, and they are this pure being together, and being together with no matter what is. And it's also that our genitals are communicating. This is what I realize. They are talking to each other, and to to listen to them, how they talk to each other is really it's a cool exploration.
And even if they're not physically touching, how they're communicating as well. That's is what I also like. I discovering how much my body would communicate and respond to a man that I had not ever been in a physical space with. And when I did meet him in person, there was no adjustment. I gave lots of time for, gosh, my body just really thinks that knows their body. And I just really slowed really down, because I thought, it could be my fantasy, it could be something else going on, like Zoom calls can be, just they're a part of life, not just the whole thing. And really there was no adjustment needed. It was the exact same sensations, energetic sensations, physical sensations, carried on. And so this is what I realized is, like, there's really a lot of communication, a lot of energetic, and a lot of communication between the bodies, even with distance. And what you said, Christina, about relaxing, this also changed a lot my presence, basically, because it's true. I think this part of the patriarchy is, okay, I need to get to orgasm, so I learned to shoot to get orgasm first, get it over with, it's done. And the part of my gremlin is also about making it fast and making it intense, or but just this kind of when you have an itch that you just kind of scratch, this intensity of like scratching. this energy. I had a lot in sexuality until I think like 5 years ago. And to really, when I'm touched, or when I touch myself, or when I'm in sexual space, to slow down, to really slow down, and really not go anywhere, just stay in the intensity. And the slowest that I went, even when there was penetration, just really slowing everything down, I could just feel so much more. And this was just gave a completely different, like I could feel my body in a totally different way. And I got like, oh, this is what it means to be in my body and aroused, and not in my head, not in a fantasy, because that's how I learned to be aroused. And even, I could have sex with myself, masturbation, because I would go into my head and just like think of a situation that would give me arousal, and then that's my body would go there. And this is totally the opposite, is being intimately connected with my body. And being that intimately connected with my body already brings a low level arousal, which means for me wakefulness of the bodies. Yeah.
Wow. We could go forever. I would say we are diving deeper and deeper and deeper, and time is flying. So Anne-Chloé, I don't know if you want to add something, like to round it up, or
No, I don't think the subject can be rounded up. I think it's more this
for today.
And my offer would be, why don't we do this again? Or something
yes.
In a few weeks, to see what has changed also with this conversation, and how this conversation, like I got a lot of experiments to also try and be with, and see what emerges out of that, or how it was it for us.
Yeah.
It's a yes from me.
Yes, for me too.
Great. So thank you very much for this beautiful conversation, which is a continuous one, it seems like. And enjoy your day, and everyone out there listening, do the same. Nice experimenting with yourself and your partners and whomever you want to do these experiments, what we just brought on the table. Thank you, Anne-Chloé.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vera.
Thank you, Anne-Chloé. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.